Girls Night In.
Hello, darling.
Hello.
Hey, you know what? I think we should talk like this for the remainder of the podcast.
Yorkshire.
They're from Yorkshire in
WI.
real life.
The
The WI. The WI. All right, Elena. If people out there, if you've not seen, what movie are we doing, Luann?
Calendar Girls.
Calendar Girls. Now, listen, people. There's several movies out there named Calendar Girls.
Yeah,
You
I
need
saw
the
that.
2003 Calendar Girls, starring Helen Mirren.
What's the
Capiche?
What's the name of Mrs. Weasley? What's that actress'
Oh,
name?
Julie Walters.
Julie.
Julie. She's also from what, Laney?
Mamma Mia.
Mamma Mia. Hey, babe. Are we going to do that one next, or are we waiting for summer for Mamma Mia?
Well, you really want to do Life of the Party, don't you? We could do that as like a graduation.
Oh, what a good idea.
Since graduation's
that's a great
coming up.
idea. Okay. But we're here today to talk about the 2003 Calendar Girls. Really awesome. Now, Elena, I would like to know when you saw this the first time, if you remember.
Oh, I remember. This is like a core memory for me. This is probably, you just have like random memories that are like burn in your brain and you think about it all the time.
Yes, I do.
Okay, let me set the stage. I think I'm like 8 or 9 when I first watched this, and my friend Jessica, is it Schneider or Snyder?
Snyder.
Jessica Snyder. She was my little, like, one of my neighborhood girlies, and they had just finished, finishing the basement because her grandma was moving in with them. And so they had, like, this basement
Oh
apartment.
my gosh, I totally remember this. Go
Yes,
ahead.
it was so pretty down there. And I was having a sleepover, and she was like, my mom said we can have a sleepover in the apartment downstairs. And she had it was my first time having zucchini bread. So good. So good.
The fact that you remember this is hilarious. Go
Because
ahead.
it was so good. And then we watched a double feature. Calendar Girls and My Best Friend's Wedding. Both first watches.
No, you saw My Best Friend's Wedding without me?
I think we fell asleep during My Best Friend's Wedding.
Elena.
All I remember is the intro with like the thinking and wishing and hoping
And hoping
and praying. Just do it.
Do it. And after you do, you will be his.
Yeah. So yeah, that was the first watch. And rewatching it now, I'm like, oh my God. First of all, I can't believe my attention was captured by this because it is kind of a slow start. And,
Okay.
And also, like, it's a little raunchy. So,
It is a little raunchy.
yeah. What about you?
Hey, listen, girls, ladies and gentlemen, if you have not seen this movie, I would highly encourage you, pause our podcast and go and watch Calendar Girls.
I would like make a moment of it, like make a spot of tea and get like some biscuits.
Yes.
Yes.
I don't know what accent that was, but that was
Yes.
not British. Yes. Because, listen, all right, Rotten Tomatoes, critics gave it 74%. Audience gave it only 67. Still, it's a high number. 67 is a high number. I encourage you, this is one of those, especially in our climate. I don't know if you agree with this, Elena, but especially in our climate, listen, everything that's dropping on the television that everyone is obsessed with watching, including me. So I'm not placing blame out there. Like The Last of Us and Succession and Severance, and we just started watching this new one on Apple TV called The Big Game. It's all slightly, if not very, depressing. This is feel good. Am I right?
And it's feel good in the midst of like, even though life is hard, you could still have a laugh and enjoy it.
Such a good point, because this is not just light and airy. This is actually based on a very true story. And we're going to get into the plot in just a second.
Well, what was your first time watching it?
Oh, honey bun, I want to tell you I watched it with Grandma.
Aww, that makes me
Such
happy.
good stuff.
Yeah.
My mom loved this movie, and I watched it for the first time with her. And this is got Star Whitman written all over it.
Yes.
It's comedy with a purpose, and that is like was her favorite kind of movie. You know, like the last movie I watched with Star before she passed was Julie and Julia. Same kind of thing. Like she just was all into this.
She
And
loved
we're gonna
Mamma
get-
Mia too.
loved Mamma Mia, absolutely. And we're going to get into this further after we pause for your commercial break for you to go watch the movie. But several of the cast members in this also starred in a television show from the BBC that my mom and I watched called Call the Midwife. And it is such a fabulous television show. And my mom was addicted to it. And so I watched part of it before she passed. And then I had to wait a while before I could watch some more. You know how you get attached to something from somebody else that's passed away. And you're like, I'm going to put that on a shelf for a while. And then finish watching it. It is a fabulous television show. And like I said, some of the women from this are in it. But go ahead, take a break. Pop yourself some popcorn, make yourself some tea, get some scones, like Elena said, and watch this, enjoy it, and then come back and listen to us.
Yes.
All right. So hopefully you've watched it. And now, Elena, could you please give us the synopsis?
Absolutely. This is going to be hard because I don't know the actresses' names and I don't remember the character names.
Okay. I can help you out along the way.
Okay. Wait, I just need the main
Okay,
two
so
ladies.
Helen Mirren is Chris.
Chris. And what's Mrs.
Julie
Weasley's-
Walters is Annie.
Okay, Chris and Annie.
Annie's
Got it. Okay. So Chris and Annie are like lifelong friends. They are both in the WI together, which is the Women's Institute, which I couldn't figure out, like, is it a Christian thing or they just meet at a church?
No, I think that it's got some sort of Christian basis because, by the way, their theme song, Jerusalem, that they play at the beginning of every meeting, just so you know, Elena, in case something tragically happens to your father and I at the same time, Jerusalem is the hymn he wants at his funeral. However, he has made a stipulation that when they say something about on over English gardens or something, he wants it to say Scottish, okay? Because your father's a wackadoodle.
I'll work on that.
Okay, so anyway, go ahead.
Okay, so they're in the WI. It's like this like ladies club. Everyone's probably like over 50 and like every week they're doing a different thing. Like it's supposed to be about educating and empowering women, but it's kind of like it's blah. Like they're living in Yorkshire. They're like in the English countryside, so it's very like slow living. And like all the lessons are just kind of whatever. Like one of them's like, "Oh, I'm going to teach you like information about broccoli that you didn't know before," or like how to bake like a super
so
light
true.
sponge cake, like stuff like that. And so Chris and Annie, like, they're in it just because, like, they just feel like they have to. Like, Chris says at
Their
one
moms
point,
were in it.
Yeah. Chris says at one point, like, I joined to, like, appease my mom. But they, like, definitely are not that vibe. Like, they're in the back of the room, like, giggling with each other the whole time and, like, cannot take it seriously. Like, they go to, like, the bake sale and they, like, get something from Publix. Not Publix, but, like, their version of Publix. And then it wins. Like, the store-bought cake wins. Not only, like, that division, but, like, the entire, like, contest.
And no one knows it was store-bought.
Yeah.
And that it's illegal to enter in something that's store-bought.
Yeah, so they're the little rebels of the group. And like who doesn't love that? So Annie, her husband, ends up getting leukemia and we kind of watch him like fight it for a little bit and then he ends up passing away. And so they decide they want to do something in his memory and so they decide they want to purchase a new couch for the bereavement room in the hospital where he passed away. And at the same time, the WI is like, what are we going to do for the calendar this year? Are we going to do like English countryside, landscapes? Like last year, the entire calendar made like $70. Like it was like no one wants this calendar. And at the same time, Chris has a teenage son at home and, you know, they show her like cleaning up his room and she finds, you know, some,
A little booby magazine.
a little baby magazine and she's like, huh, interesting. Okay. And I love her. She's such a good mom because she doesn't even say anything. She just puts it back and folds his clothes, gives him a little kiss on the cheek on her way out of his room. And I'm like, you're a good mom. You are such a
Yep.
good mom. But so now she's thinking, and then like she takes her bike to go get fixed. And at the bike shop, they have a booby calendar. And she's like, huh, you know, these are popular. And so finally they're like, okay, for the calendar this year, her and Annie, she convinces Annie, like, we should do a booby calendar, but like make it WI. Like we'll be baking cakes, or we'll be singing Jerusalem, or knitting a sweater, but we're all nude. It's not naked, it's nude. So somehow they convince like half the women in the WI to be a part of this. And the leader is kind of like trying to fight it, but then eventually she's like, whatever, have at it. So they ended up making this calendar, and at first they think like no one like came to their press release. They think like nobody cares. They're worried they're going to lose money because it was way more expensive to make, obviously, than like previous calendars, because they had to hire a photographer and get it printed and this and that. But it ends up that like it's wildly popular to the point where they get invited to go out to Hollywood to go and do like ad campaigns and create an American version of the calendar, and they're all over the news, and the BBC is following them. And all throughout this time, like, Annie is still healing, obviously, from the loss of her husband, and Chris is kind of like pulling away from her husband and son because she's getting distracted by this fame. And so that kind of creates a rift between Annie and Chris, because Annie's like, you still have your husband, like you should be cherishing him. And so that's kind of like the conflicts that they get to. And you know, they both kind of teach each other something, and then by the end of it, they decide to just come home. I don't think they follow through with, like, all the ads in Hollywood. I think they end up, like, you know, they don't want to just become, like, some kind of commodity. So they end up just coming home, and Chris and Annie both learn something from one another. Chris is like, you know what, you're so right. I need to be cherishing my husband and my son. And it all just kind of has a happy ending, and that's the story. I don't really know how else to wrap it up other than it's a sweet story, and it's a true story.
It is a true story. And so to date, this calendar that was put out in 2000 has earned, do you want to guess how much money?
I don't know. In the movie, and obviously this is like right when it happened, like right when it comes out, they're like, we've raised like 286,000 quid, which is like $400,000 or something.
To date, this calendar, the original print of the calendar, has brought in $3.7 million.
And does it all go to leukemia?
Yeah, it all goes. They built a wing they built a wing, not just a couch in the family room. They built a wing onto the cancer center there. And actually, they did a 10-year reunion.
Oh.
Six of the original 11, and they put out another calendar. This time it was in color. The first one was black and white. I also love it because their symbol is what? What do they all wear?
Oh, sunflowers, which is like, it makes me think of Yaya a little bit.
Yep.
It's like
my
the
sunflower.
British Yaya a little bit.
Yep. It is. And, you know, I think that's what it was really appealing to me for this movie in general, is that once again, it falls in G&I's category of women empowering women.
Yes.
And, you know, Chris is seen as a bit of a flake. Helen Mirren's character is seen as a bit of a flake. And at first they're all like, this is just another one of those Chris schemes and it's all going to blow up in our faces. And that doesn't happen. I mean, like Elena says, there's a couple of moments. But the casting, I think, is absolutely amazing casting. And like one of my favorite scenes, your dad watched it with me. He had seen it before. And you know how we are with your dad when he does that laugh where he's kind of wheezing.
Yes, the wheeze.
Which we love so much. There were lots of wheezing moments for him, but his favorite is when the women are doing their photo shoot and all the men are gathering at the bar.
Yeah.
And they trickle in and it's like they're waiting for a baby to be born. And the husbands are all like, they're never going to go through with this. They're not really going to do it. And the women who were actually in the calendar, the real calendar, this is how it went down, that they were all really nervous, but then they started drinking. And then after somebody would finish their photo shoot, then they would open a bottle of champagne to celebrate her for having the guts to do this. And
I also love like how body positive this is, and it's like
Yes.
they're all different shapes and sizes, these women, and also like they're all over 50, and it's like you're still like gorgeous and sexy and like empowered. And like they even say at some point like some of the women like it like reignites their sex life, and like I just love that.
And one of the positive reviews on Rotten Tomatoes said that they liked the fact that there were underlying backstories of other characters other than Annie and Chris, like Ruth. Ruth says one of my favorite lines in this. You all know Ruth from Downton Abbey. She plays the young man who, gosh, I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, that Mary falls in love with, and then they get married and he's killed in a car accident.
Oh my God. I've only seen that episode. And I remember being like, I can't watch
You
this.
are lying to me. That's all you've seen of Downton Abbey?
Besides like bits and pieces of you guys watching it, that's like the one full episode I've seen when the guy dies in the car
honey,
crash.
and that's just a shame because it's a great television show. But she is a principal character in all of Downton Abbey, Penelope Wilton, and her character's name is Ruth, and she's sort of the shy, what you would call the stereotypical housewife, where everyone else watching from the outside knows that her husband, who travels on business, is having an affair. I mean, you know from the get-go, but she's, I think, purposefully ignoring the fact that he's out of town so much. She just doesn't want to think.
She's in denial, yeah.
She's, absolutely in denial. And at one point, when they're getting to the place where they're talking about, we're really going to make this calendar, we're really going to be nude, like Elena says. I keep saying we're nude, we're not naked, because nude is artistic. But Ruth says, we're not all Chris's in this life. Some of us are Ruths. And she's talking to Chris about the fact that, of course, you don't mind taking your clothes off because look at you. But I don't want to take my clothes off because I'm a Ruth. I'm not a Chris. And I was like, golly day, I can so resonate with that because I have the unfortunate experience of having my best friend be absolutely a knockout. And it's like you spend your all your time going, I love this person unconditionally. I just kind of wish that she wasn't so beautiful. It's like,
yeah, well, first of all, I think you're a knockout. But also, I've talked about this phenomenon. I've talked about it with my sister-in-law, Kendall, where it's like there's so many, like I love that. It's like one of those weird things about being a woman where like you meet another woman and you want to hate her because she's so beautiful and perfect, but then like she's also beautiful and perfect on the inside, and you're like, oh, I want to hate you, but like I'm obsessed with you. I love you. You're the best person ever.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. One of your dad's favorite parts is when they're talking about, well, what's going to be showing? And one of the characters says, well, no front bottoms.
Oh, that cracked me up too. The front
We're not going to show
bottoms.
our front bottoms.
Did you know in England, fanny
Yes.
means vagina? So like,
Yes.
if you like, when I was a missionary overseas, one of my teammates only one of them was British, and so we were like, oh, let's like get fanny packs, and she was like, you cannot. She's like, please stop, because in America, fanny means your butt. But in England, it means your hoo-ha. So she was like, oh, please don't call it
You're
that.
the JJ. Uh-huh. That is so funny. I saw that on a comedy special. I think I made you watch it. I know I made you watch it, but I can't remember what it was. But they're like, oh, when you go sledding, you sit on your fanny. And they're like, what?
Yeah.
I don't want to slide on my fanny. Yeah, I know. Helen Mirren says one of my favorite lines about the WI, and she says, if more people did the WI, there would be half the need for hallucinogenic drugs because everybody's such a wackadoodle that goes to these meetings. But it makes me think of like in any church guild organization, the knitting guilds and all this kind of stuff where it's like, oh, all this feigned politeness, but you really don't know what's going on behind closed doors. Mm-hmm. I like that whole thought process.
Like everybody's just showing up and like doing the decorum, but like on the inside, everyone's just like, is anyone else like bored? Like,
Yeah, like, don't you wonder about all the underlying lives of the women in the junior league?
Yeah.
You know that there's some serious trash
Or
going on.
what is Emily in on Gilmore Girls? The DAR.
Oh, the Daughters of the American Revolution.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's some crusty stuff going on.
Yeah.
there.
Oh my God.
I wanted to know, at some point, I wanted to talk to you about the son's reaction to all of this. So Chris's son, like Elena said, is going through this phase of life where he's, a teenage boy. So they're obsessed with. I love that conversation he and his bestie have in the bus.
We were laughing so hard at his friend going like plums, talking about what
like
boobs
plums.
are like.
They're like, what is it? He says like kumquats. Oh no, they're more like plums.
Plums.
And it's so awesome. Mangoes. They're like mangoes.
Then he
no, they're more
settles
like
on,
plums.
they're like
Balloons
from the day after a birthday party or something. Like little deflated. Okay.
And he's like, stop talking about tits. But what do you think about the son's reaction? Do you feel like that was warranted? How would you have felt if, or actually it would be my age now, because the women say they're like 50, 55. Would you be down with your mom posing like this?
As a 25-year-old, I'd be like, hell yeah, get your tits out. But like as a 14-year-old, I probably would have been embarrassed. And I honestly thought the son handled it very maturely because, I don't know, I've grown up with teenage boys and I've been a teenager myself, so I know how teenagers can be super reactive, and I thought he was pretty calm the whole time. I'm surprised he didn't like scream at his mom, You
know what? I agree with that. I do love how they say oregano.
Oregano.
They think he's smoking pot, but it was really a pound of oregano. So if you guys have watched the movie, it goes on to the fact that the young man ends up getting arrested for smoking pot, but it's not pot, it's oregano. And Chris kind of laughs it off. Do you think her reaction is okay?
I think Annie is right in her intention to redirect Chris to look at the situation more seriously. I think you're right about like Chris is a little bit flaky. She kind of like does her own thing. Like it's like there's a fine line between being a little bit rebellious and then like just not taking anything seriously. And I think she's kind of riding that line a little bit. And I think like it's easier for her to just laugh it off and focus on the calendar than to actually like pause and take a look at what's going on at home and maybe consider that it needs more of her attention. And I totally get why Annie is like a little bitter about it because like her husband passed away. She doesn't have any kids. So like she's all on her own now. And so to see her best friend kind of like blow off her son who's clearly like needing nurturing right now, and like her husband also gets tricked into, we didn't even explain this, but her husband gets tricked into oversharing to a journalist, and he's joking like, oh yeah, like some of the women are like, it's reignited their sex life, but couldn't be me, like joking with this person that he thinks is a customer and it's really a journalist. And so that's another stressor that's going on, is that this article has now come out where, oh, Mr. January isn't getting any sex and whatever. So Annie's like, you need to be, she's like, there's no way that John, I think his name is John. There's no way that, oh no, John is her husband. But anyway, she's talking about Chris's husband. She's like, he must have been tricked. There's no way he would have said that. But Chris is using it kind of as an excuse to just do what she wants to do. And,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What are your thoughts on that?
I think everything that you said is dead on. I actually very much appreciated their blow up argument that they have in the lot.
Me too.
On the Hollywood lot, Chris and Annie get into an argument, and I really appreciated it from the standpoint of I thought they were both right.
Yeah.
Chris did come up with this calendar idea because she loved Annie's husband like a brother. And she was integral in his care too, if we can, if we're to believe that what's shown in the movie, that when Annie was at the hospital, so was Chris, and that she was helping John with his recoveries. And so she was invested in this, and she came up with the calendar idea completely out of altruistic, wanting to do the right thing for her best friend and her friend's husband's memory. So she didn't do it to become famous. But then it resonated with me on so many levels that when it became popular, when this calendar got support and they caught the attention of the publicist, and these photographers showed up, and the people started calling from Hollywood, that of course that was appealing to her because she had been a housewife and a mom.
Yeah, what a good point. Like why why are they even in the WI to begin with? Because they need something to fill their time.
Right. And it was their mother's expectation. And so this is what you do as women in Yorkshire, which is actually where it took place, but there's a
they're in Napoli,
the town
Napoli?
Napoli, and that's a made up town. It actually took place in Yorkshire, but I so resonate with that because even though I've had a career as a teacher, it still feels, I'm sorry, I'm just going to be honest. That still feels like a women's diminutive path for a career.
Yeah.
Traditionally, and that it's mainly women. As a matter of fact, I got my hackles up this week for something. This is completely off topic for G and I, but I got my hackles up because I'm recertifying. Even though I'm quitting, I have to recertify just in case I decide to go back into the classroom. And one of the training videos I watched for my recertification, at one point they say, and the teacher, when and I was like, I'm going to write them a strongly worded email because how dare you?
Yeah.
Especially in a profession where we absolutely need more male figures to be the example, male role models for our young men in especially in inner city schools. I found that to be really inappropriate. So I feel badly.
Did it seem like an old video, or was it like
No. It's one of the newer ones.
Wow.
Because it's like about cultural diversity, as a matter of fact.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. And so I feel badly saying this, but since I'm in a role that it has typically been overwhelmingly, predominantly female, when Chris starts to get this recognition for something that is businesslike, it is actually creative, sort of a male-dominated area of the, nude photographs being mainly, like a Hugh Hefner kind of idea. I was inspired by her. Mm-hmm. And I could totally see where after years and years and years, I think the son is 15, let's say 15 years of being stuck, quote unquote, in the house, where this would be alluring. Mm-hmm. Here you are, the organizer and instigator of this, and the 10 others of you are going to go to Hollywood and you don't get to go?
Right, and I don't think we clarified, when the son gets caught smoking weed is when Annie's like, that's when they're about to go to Hollywood, but Annie says to Chris, are you really sure you should be leaving him right now? Which I get, like, if I were Chris and I was in that headspace, I'd be annoyed with Annie. I'd be like, really? You're going to guilt me into not going to Hollywood? This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. So she originally stays, and then the article comes out from her husband that he was tricked into saying all those things, and she uses that as the excuse. She's like, well, I'm flying out to Hollywood. I'm meeting them out there.
I'm so glad you used those words of she uses it as the excuse, because she doesn't even try to talk to him about it. She just hops on a plane,
right?
Because she wants to go. She wants to have a reason to go. So I'm looking for this book that I know what it's called. It's called Barefoot. Hildebrand is the
I've heard of this
author.
I think they talked about her on Armchair.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But in this book, it's about two sisters, and one sister has got lung cancer, and they are spending the summer on Nantucket, and her younger sister is caring for her and her two children. But in the same vein that I was talking about with the what are your roles? How do we see ourselves if once we become mothers? And how that shifts everything in a woman's mind and what we really crave outside of that motherhood. And, you know, it's almost that spike the ball moment where you think, well, once all the kids are out of the house, then maybe I can see who I want to be or who I am. Mm-hmm. And I think that resonates with so many people, which is why I kind of lean on the side of Chris rather than Annie in this movie.
I think, yeah, I would agree. I would think Annie was wrong in the way she went about talking about this with Chris. But I also think like Annie's super hurt and grieving. So I understand why it came out the way it did. Because it's very like, really? You're going to go? Really? You're going to be mad at your husband? Like she shouldn't be pointing it out to Chris in a guilting way. If she was in a better headspace, I think she could have gone about it more gently and just saying like, you know, what are your thoughts on what's going on with your son? Or, you know, just
that's
more
a good
gentle
point.
of like just probing rather than guilting.
Yes. Yep, absolutely. So some of the reviews that came up on Rotten Tomatoes, really the overall feeling from the critics is that it's really good performances and kind of like trite isn't the right word, but predictable maybe is a better word. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that kept popping up over and over and over again, even on the Wikipedia page about when Helen Mirren and Julie Walters were looking at whether or not they wanted to do this film, was that they were concerned that it was going to be too much like The Full Monty. Now, do you know that movie?
I don't know the premise. I just know it's like naked, like there's nakedness in it.
Yes, there is, and it's middle-aged men, and it's called The Full Monty because they bear everything. And the way it comes about, it's a fictional story though, and so that's where I take umbrage with the fact that they're saying that this was the Full Monty, but it was for women. Because how I feel is that I feel like it's unfortunate that the Full Monty came to light before Calendar Girls did. Because I think if Calendar Girls had come out first, either Full Monty wouldn't have been made, or everyone would have said, oh, of course they got their inspiration from this true story that was about women.
Right.
Because the Full Monty is not a true story. It's based on sort of the same premise that all these men had gotten laid off from a factory that closes, and they need to pay their bills. In particular, this one man who is behind on his child support and now cannot see his son. And so how are they going to make money when one of the guys that's in this guys group sees this line of women waiting outside for a Chippendales performance? And he says, what if we did it, but we did it all the way? We did the Full Monty. I wonder if we could make enough money that we could get our friend out of hock with his child support payment. So critics came back with, oh, Calendar Girls is just the Full Monty with women. And my pushback to that is, yeah, but it was a true story.
Right. And I think that's so telling, too, of like, there's so many franchises or concepts where like men did it first and then, you know, they'll do like the women's version, like Oceans or Ghostbusters, which people shit on both of those. But it is unfortunate, like you're mentioning, because this had, and I've never seen Full Monty, so I can't speak to that, but this is a true story. It has heart, and there's a greater purpose besides, oh, isn't it funny to see these older ladies naked? Like, that's not the point. And it's just unfortunate that people are pinning it as, you know, just the women's version, when really it's its own story.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. Just because they have that in common doesn't make it the same. And so if you still have not watched it and you're still listening to this, go and watch it, because it does have, like Laney said, it's got heart at the basis of it, mainly because it is a true story, but because everything that they garnered from this, they gave back to their community. I will say I got a little bit of a sadness for you. Only 6 of the original 11 did the 2010 calendar, because apparently the other 5 have fallen away from the group.
I did see some article that was like the truth about the real Calendar Girls and like the drama. And I was like, I don't even want to read that because I feel like that's going to make me sad.
Yeah, so apparently there was some division over the publicity of it. Only 6 of them gave the rights to go to Hollywood. And so apparently those other 5 are the same that didn't pose for the 2010, which, I mean, not knowing any of the real backstory, I hesitate to even comment because we all know that there's always 2 sides, and we've always, every person has been caught in the middle of, every adult person has been caught in the middle of some scenario where you're like, that is not at all what happened. But I think the overarching good that came out of the first calendar could make it worth it. I mean, the fact that all the families that have been taken care of in that cancer center since they had the new wing put on, I don't know how you could say that the publicity wasn't worth it.
Yeah, and I think like there's always going to be that side to something with that level of fame. It's easy for it to get twisted. I mean, we kind of see it in the movie a little bit where the original purpose was to raise money for this, for the leukemia ward, and then now like it's like, oh, we're gonna pose naked for this like laundry commercial, and like that doesn't really align with like our values. Like
Yes.
that doesn't really, what's the purpose of that, you know? So, and we kind of see Chris getting distracted in that way. Like even when they get their first sponsor, Annie wants it to be a company that her husband like worked with, like something that made sense for her husband. And Chris ended up getting a sponsor from like a beer company. And Annie's like, well, John didn't even drink beer. And Annie's like, it doesn't matter, it's a sponsor. And in that moment, I think that makes sense. But then she kind of keeps staying on that path and starts losing perspective on what the whole purpose was.
So something else before we wrap up, another conversation I thought was incredibly poignant, that I appreciated the dialogue, was when the head of the WI comes over to Annie's house with flowers. And she's using the old, age-old statements of, I know how you feel. And Annie very gently, I thought, very maturely and gently is coming back with, really? You know how I feel. And I think it's always a good reminder. Somebody said something to me that I thought was really powerful. It may have been in a book, it may have been in a lecture series or a podcast, that even if you've been through the same exact, you could parallel, and I think it's a really good example, spouses who have been through a severe loss together, the loss of a child, their experiences are not the same. Even though they lost the same person in the same way, it doesn't mean that you can ever say to somebody, I know how you feel, because no one does, even if you've had the same loss. And that was so profound to me, because it's so easy. You want to empathize with someone, but that statement can be so damaging.
Yeah.
Instead of, I know how you feel, how empowering it is to say, tell me how you're feeling. And coming off of any kind of a loss, I think it's just a new angle of looking at things, to have grace for a person who's hurting.
Yeah, I think the first step, and if you're trying to comfort a friend or a loved one who's lost someone, is just telling yourself, I do not know how they feel.
Yeah.
Like, don't even try to like, that's the thing, is just know that you don't know, and then just be there.
I thought that was a really good lesson from this movie. I think there are several things that can be gleaned from watching this. And I think it's inspiring. And like I said, there's so few things out right now that when you watch them, you walk away feeling like that was time well spent, and that maybe it's made me learn something and I might feel like a better person instead of the whole world is coming to an end.
Right. It's hopeful. And I like, to your point, like even with watching Last of Us, which is an incredible show, but there's so much media that when you walk away, you think, well, the world's going to hell in a handbasket. And there's so few media pieces now that end on a hopeful note of like, you know what? Life is hard, but it's going to be okay. And I think that is the message of Calendar Girls.
Absolutely. I love it. So we highly recommend it. Yes. It got a 6.5 out of 10 on IMDb. And at this point, I feel like anything that's over 5 is worth your time. Mm-hmm. Do you have anything you've been watching recently that's either old or new that when you walk away from it, you feel better?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's why I only watch old stuff. I mean, I do watch, but honestly, like any of the new stuff I watch, like even, this is so stupid, but we're watching Love is Blind, the new season. And this season is so brutal. Everyone is so mean. And like I had to stop watching Real Housewives because it was actually making me so sad because I was like, wow, like they're so mean to each other and they tear each other down. That's so stupid. But that's why I watch Golden Girls. That's why I watch Gilmore Girls and why I fall asleep watching Full House or The Nanny. Like I just can't handle the negativity that is, like, I feel like our generation, this generation right now is like, negativity is like the humor and it's like the, you know, if you're not cynical, then you're just
unintelligent.
Earnest.
I think that they link it to intelligence.
Yes.
Speaking of seeing it in your daily life, though, you know, with what I do for a living, I will say, I think one time I'm going to ask Elena to interview me for either G&I or some outlying podcast that we could do, bonus episode or whatever, of what public education has turned into, because me seeing what I see on a daily basis in a public school system leaves me feeling very hopeless for our world. And so then to come home in the evening and try and get recharged for the next day to go back into that environment, watching stuff that is inherently negative is really bad for my psyche. And I'm imagining that's true for most people in post-COVID. So one of the shows that has gotten huge acclaim, and rightfully so, is Ted Lasso.
I knew you were going to say that.
And I mean, do you watch it, Lou?
I don't, but not because I just haven't watched it. But everyone I talk to is like, it's so happy, it's so uplifting. So I need to watch it.
It is the good guys win, and he is who we all wish we could be, and shows the power of positive thinking. And I walk away from that show every week believing that humanity still has a chance. And I just think it's such a worthy show. And I think that's why so many people have gleaned onto it. If there were more shows out there like that, I think that, you know, they would be just as popular.
I think too, like, the only one coming to mind right now of modern is Abbott Elementary, where they still address like exactly what you're saying. The school system is so broken, but like Quinta, is that the actress's name? I think that's her name.
Goodness, I'm sorry, I don't know.
But like, she always has such a positive attitude, and she's like, nope, we're going to keep showing up. We're going to keep it positive. And that, like, I like shows where they still address, like, no, the world is definitely going through it, but like, we're going to keep moving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Quinta Brunson, she, I sent a TikTok on there. They sent on TikTok, Abbott Elementary had like a little promo thing. And I was like, you know what? My comment was, I love this show, but the kids are too well behaved to be realistic. And I got a bunch of likes on that because it's true, it's unfortunate, but it's true. But you're right. It is popular because it is lighthearted. And it shows that there's promise in people and that people are inherently good. Mm-hmm. I think that there's a definite need for that market. And maybe there's so few of them because it's hard to come up with concepts in this day and age where it's even close to realistic, where there would still be that kind of positive outcome, I guess.
Yeah, and I think it also what we were just saying of like the trend right now is negativity as humor and as intelligence, and so that's where a lot of these shows are going, and I don't know, brings me down.
Yeah, it does. So these are the kind of things that we need to be liking and we need to be watching more of, because the more that we show demand for these and the more we shut down the negativity, the more that will get made. Mm-hmm. So, anywho. All right, my darling. Any last thoughts on Calendar Girls? Where would you rate it?
I would probably give it a 7 or an 8. I did think there are slow moments. I feel like the movie kind of slows down and speeds back up in the middle. So I think the pacing could have been a little bit better. But I love the concept. Beautiful, like, cinematography. Greg kept commenting, was like, oh my God, this is gorgeous. And like, we were so surprised how like artsy it is. Like, it's a lot of the shots, like the shot of them on the lot in their robes when they're fighting, and it's just like high above. This is very like,
oh, I love that. I know exactly what you're talking about. Because
and like some of the transitions too.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. Yep. So do yourself a favor sometime in the near future and watch Calendar Girls. And baby girl, did you say we're going to do Life of the Party next?
Life of the Party next. And then I'm thinking so we'll just let you guys
Mamma
in.
Mia.
We've decided, I know we've said a couple different things on our previous podcast of where we're going to be going this spring and summer, but we've decided, like, we've been doing a lot of niche hits or like niche hole in the wall like movies, and I feel like it's time to give the people what they want. And so get ready for a summer hits series. We're going to be doing all of your requests. Mamma Mia, Legally Blonde. I would love to do a Princess Diaries. So
for sure.
Stay tuned. And if you have any other requests, please let us know.
And thanks for hanging in there with us, guys. You guys are so wonderful and amazing. Want to give a shout out to one of my husband's associates at work had come up to him and they were chit-chatting, and she said, I listen to your daughter and your wife's podcast every time that it drops. And we were like, oh my gosh, somebody's still listening.
I know.
So thank you.
That's so encouraging, because we know, like, it's been, and we also are coming up on 1 year. So maybe we should do something special for our 1 year.
Oh my goodness.
It's been such a crazy year. And those of y'all that are still listening and sticking in with us, we appreciate you. We know that we've been on again, off again. We know our social media presence has fluctuated. And a lot of that is just due to such a crazy year of changes. But thank you so much from the bottom of our hearts to those of you who are still listening. We love you so, so much.
Yep, it gives us so much joy, and we do. And it gives us a wonderful hour together that we get to see each other on screen. So thank you for that. Right. I love you, Butterbean.
I love you so much.
And guess what? I get to see you in let me think, 9 days.
9 days.
9 days for your birthday, baby.
Yep.
You're going to be 26.
My 26th birthday. Family's coming, and we're going to Disney.
We're going to Disney. So if we run into you in the parks, come up and say hello.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be so cool, honey? That would be so cool.
Yeah, one of our
All right,
listeners.
guys. One of our 3 listeners. I think we know where they're going to be because they're our family. But we love you.
Love you guys.
All right. See you next time.
Girl.